got lost. Somebody ought to put together a map of where to go bird watching. So I wrote a little book, A Birder's Guide to Ocean Shores, a map inside so anybody could find it and not get lost. We had such fun with that, we decided to take another book, A Birder's Guide to Coastal Washington, which just took off from that. And then we finally ended up with another book. Actually, a series of books. One was called The Birds of the Puget Sound Region, this book. And then we came up with a new edition of it, The Birds of the Puget Sound Region, Coast to Cascades. And the reason for doing that is people who came down to the coast to birdwatch, this didn't cover all the birds. So we expanded it to cover all of Western Washington, all the water birds, all the mountain birds. So now there's a book for anybody who wants to go birding any place in the state, or the western part of the state. So that's been great fun. I've enjoyed birding down here. This is clearly the best place to bird in the state of Washington. It's an absolute book. The chapter's been very active, very supportive for those of us who like to come down here and participate wherever we can. I've always believed that it's important to leave the world a little bit better than the place when you came in. So my contribution is writing books, helping the new birders, things like that. So thank you.
What's your next book, Bob?
I don't think there will be a next book. We've actually taken this small version and put it together for all the parts of the western part of the country. So now if you want to go to Arizona, there's a book like that. Or California, or places like that.
Wow.
So that's enough for me for one lifetime.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Bob. This is okay. Who's next would have a story? Jenny, our muralist.
I don't really need a microphone. I just want to thank you guys for hiring me to do that job. It was great. I learned so much about birds while I was painting that mural because all the bird people came by and they knew more about birds than I did, and it was a pleasure. And two people have asked me if we got the coating on, you know, the Mark Swanson and Gil Stewart. They saw to it that that's been done, and it was a couple weeks ago they did it. So
Okay.
that's all.
That's great. Thank you, Jenny. I also would like to tell a story about the early days or recent days, or that would kind of help us all share the history of Grace Harbor. Becky is a founding member. Yeah, so, yeah, use your.
So I wrote a couple of notes of things that I thought you might, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That you might be interested in. So when I first moved here in 1986, everyone watched birds on the highway side of the harbor. Do you all remember that? So you drive along the highway and then you would just park. It was parking in mud and you had to walk out. And it was my doctor who told me about that, you know, way to watch birds. I'd never lived near the coast like this before. And every place that I had lived before coming here, we lived in the country or in a small town, no Audubon Society. But in those days, if you joined the National Audubon Society, you automatically became a member of the closest one to you, which was Olympia. So we attended the meetings in Olympia, and Olympia at that time, I don't know if they still do, had a wonderful bookshop where you could go and talk to people and buy books. Do you know if that still exists?
I don't think
Nope.
Anyway, that was a great resource. And so then after watching birds at the highway side, people started going through the airport, and there was no trail. Do you all remember that?
Yes.
So you had to wear boots. Some people wore hip boots, and you had to walk out. And one thing you could do at those in those days was you could walk clear out to the end of the runway, which was a great place to see birds, more so than on the harbor. But we can't do that anymore. And then I'm not sure when the trail was put in, but I am thinking they were actually older than 30 years. Because I'm thinking that we started talking about a local Audubon society about 1990. There were things in my life going on then that were keeping me pretty busy, but I remember that time. And so, because we'd had to go up to Olympia in order to connect with Audubon, it sounded like such a great idea. And so these two women came down and kind of organized us and started the Audubon Society. And it wasn't until, I think it was my sister gave me this book. It's Extraordinary Women Conservationists of Washington. Have any of you seen this book?
I have read that book. I have that book.
So I noticed that the copyright was 2015. It wasn't until I read this book that I found out that the two women who came down here to help us start our Audubon Society were Hazel Wolf and Helen Engel.
Oh,
Ingalls,
nice.
I think. And I didn't know who they were, but they're famous, and I recommend this book. It's a wonderful history of how conservation movements got started in our state, and women were leaders way back when. And so I'll pass this around. I marked a couple. There's a couple of photos of Helen and Hazel, and there's one little, they're mentioned throughout the book because they actually, I think, went all over the state starting Audubon societies. So, so we're part of that history. And I didn't even know, that these were such wonderful women who had done so much. So one thing I wanted to tell you about was when we first started talking, Lana's Cafe. Do you all know?
Yes.
So Lana let us have meetings there, and I think that the Nisqually wildlife people, they arranged for us to be trained in identifying birds, counting large numbers of birds, also training in telemetry and catching birds in mist nets. And so all of us were working. We got trained, we were excited, like I had a partner and we'd go out on the south side of the harbor at least once a week, and we had about 5 stops that we made. We would spend a certain amount of time there and count birds and report them. And we had a lot of people of all ages involved, because I remember giving, there was a teenager who couldn't drive yet, and I gave him rides a lot. And he was really interested in the telemetry part of it. So I think that really helped us get started, because we were able to include so many different kinds of people in wonderful activities, and people were learning a lot. And then when we started the first Shorebird Festival, the food bank out at, across from the airport area, I don't know if somehow that was donated for that. I don't really know how it happened, but so that's where our very first Shorebird Festival was in that old food bank. And the Audubon members, we did carpentry and painting, and we did a lot of repairs to that building, and had, for a food bank, they really hadn't been maintaining it, the building. They were just getting food. And I remember that Sheila McCartan brought down a bunch of stuffed animals, you know, that we set up in this very small little area inside the building there. I mean, we started very small, but it was fun. And so I became very busy. I had teenagers and a lot of other things coming on, and I kind of dropped out of, you know, being involved in all of that for a little while. So I'll leave it to the rest of you.
But now you're back, right?
I'm back, yes. Yeah, kids are grown up and, yeah. So,
Becky,
yeah.
tell us where that building was.
Well, it's still there.
Tell us where it is.
Oh, okay, so if you're going to, if you're going to the Sandpiper Trail, so you have so if you're driving along the road, it depending on how you go, if you're driving along the road, you'll see the sewage ponds on your left, if they're still there. And then before you reach the old airport terminal, it's a little building off to the side. There's a fence there. And does that explain it?
Was it a Pepsi Cola bottling building at one time?
I don't know about that.
Because that's what we've always referred to that building as.
Oh, yeah,
Interesting.
I don't know.
Well, even now, in the Shorebird Festival on Friday, they launched the Friday field trips from that building because they don't yet have access to the school. So it's still used by Audubon people. Yeah.
But is it owned by the wildlife refuge?
Right. It
I
is on
think
the
it must
record.
be, because
It
I
is
know
on
they
the
stored
record.
stuff in the upstairs, I remember that. Yeah.
My guess is that they may have added something on to, an addition to the building, than what it was when you were first there. But
I don't know.
anyway, I'm really glad to know that's where that happened.
Yeah. Thanks, Becky. I've learned a lot already. Now, anybody else?
I want Diane to talk.
I second that.
Yeah. I was hoping you would step forward, Diane.
I was just about to raise my hand.
Okay.
I know a lot of you, but just in case I don't know someone in the audience, I'm Diane Swithrath. I retired in 2008, and in 2012 my husband and I moved to Olympia, and a few years after that I had to finally resign from the board after many, many years. I did want to tag on to something that Bob talked about a little bit. I have a clear recollection of Bob coming back from a birding festival, and he reminded me on the way out here that it was in Arizona, and we met up in Olympia, and he was so excited and enthusiastic and said, Grays Harbor needs to have a birding festival. Grays Harbor has all these amazing birds and has shorebird migration. Grays Harbor needs to have a festival. And so the festival I'm talking about came after what Becky talked about. Becky talked about the original. And so I guess what I got involved with Bob and a lot of other people would have been a slightly later iteration of that. And we wanted to be like the big boy festivals, and we wanted to have the organized field trips, and we wanted to have exhibits, and we needed a place. I mean, we couldn't do it out at that refuge building. It was just too small. And we rented a couple of large rooms at a local hotel, motel, and did the best advertising we could do. We didn't know if anybody would show up at all, but lo and behold, a few dozen people came and had a great time. I mean, it's all about the birds, right? So they saw great birds and they were happy, and it just continued to grow and blossom from that. So that kind of adds to historical things Becky talked about, and Bob didn't exactly say, but he was instrumental in getting us started in that direction. So you probably know how well the Shorebird Festival has done over the years. The other sort of historical thing I wanted to talk about is our other big program, which is all of the wildlife habitat that Grace Harbor Audubon owns, and continues to be like the largest landowner in Audubon chapters, definitely in the state of Washington and probably amongst a whole lot of states. I don't know, I haven't really done any major research, but I don't know that there are very many other Audubon chapters. Maybe Maryland, in Massachusetts, that's a big one. Even Seattle Audubon, they do own some land, but not the level of what we own, and not the number of acres. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about how that all came to be, because it was a long time ago now. It was probably 1996 or so, and I got a phone call. I was at work, and somehow somebody tracked me down and said they wanted to donate $25,000 to Grace Harbor Audubon to purchase and secure wildlife habitat. And I said something like, oh, you must have us mixed up with another chapter. We are really small and we don't own any property, and I just couldn't wrap my head around that concept. And so this person said, well, I've talked to other people in National Audubon and other chapters, and you've gotten really good recommendations from these other people, and I'm still not able to really consider that concept. We hung up, and then I remember sometime later, but not very long, this person tracked down my home phone number, called me at home, and said, no, I think you are the right organization. And I said, well, okay, I said, I'll take it to the board. I mean, it was not my decision alone. I was on the board. I don't even remember at that point what position I had. And so I did take it to the board, and there was a lot of discussion. I mean, the whole concept of accepting that responsibility was huge, especially back then when the chapter was, so young and small. But the board at that time, I have to say, was really progressive and forward thinking, and they decided to take a leap. And there's this Martin Luther King quote that is so good, I don't remember it word for word, but it's about having the faith to take the first step when you can't see the rest of the staircase. You don't know where it's going, you don't know where it is. So the board voted and agreed to take that money and do their best to comply with the request to purchase and secure wildlife habitat. And I think we probably figured if we mess it up, if something goes very, very wrong, we'll find another organization to take it off our hands.
How did you decide what properties to focus on?
Very good question. So as I recall, the anonymous donor at the time wanted habitat that could support bear and had a special place in their heart for wetlands. So, I mean, Grays Harbor County has a lot of that. A lot of wet places and a lot of places that bears could live. So, as I recall, it didn't take us too long. We did look at different properties, but it didn't take us too long to find the first one, which was outside of Westport on, I think that's Highway 105, right, Jen? It was, a marshy place, and I don't think it had ever had any structures on it. So we all agreed we would purchase that. And I remember writing a little report on our process and what we did with that money and sending that to the donor. And I thought we were done. I thought, okay, we did it. We accomplished what they wanted us to do, and we were all happy about what we'd done. And it, again, did not take long to be contacted by them, and they said, they were very happy to hear about what we've done, and they said, we were right, you are the right organization. Here's some more money, go buy some more. So over the years, that just kept happening, and we ended up with this beautiful portfolio of property that's protecting wetlands, is protecting riparian areas, lots of beautiful places like along the hump tulips, and just so many great things. And we expanded. I mean, we actually got a federal grant that helped us purchase the properties along Highway 109. And we also had some smaller donors through Bob Morris's connections and some other connections that we made to help us purchase that piece of property, which is just, another amazing piece. So, that's just kind of in a nutshell the history of that program. So the chapter continues to be special and unique, and stewarding, taking care of those properties. There was,
How many properties do you have now?
Jan probably knows off the top of your head.
What was that question?
How many acres, how many?
3,300.
Wow.
3,300 acres, and I don't know, a whole bunch of parcels, different properties.
Like something like 80-some
80
parcels, different
some
parcels.
Wonderful.
Wow, that's great. Anything catastrophic happen with this whole, with getting the properties? I mean, I'd like to see other Audubon do this. This is great, good for you.
It's-
Really, I had no idea.
It's
It's been okay.
It's been okay. It's
Okay.
a scary thing.
Of
It
course.
was really a scary thing to do.
Yeah, but,
But, we got insurance. That was like one of the first concerns was, having liability insurance if someone got hurt on one of our properties and
right.
that kind of thing. So, we did that. The donor who had given us most of the money, or a lot of the money, allowed us to, take some of that and create a sort of maintenance account. I mean, there were property taxes, there still are property taxes. We were able to exempt a lot of the properties,
I would hope so.
but we also
The
didn't,
Conservation Land Trust.
Yeah.
Don't they take care of some of our land?
yeah, right, they have conservation easements on a lot of our properties. We still own them, but the land trust has that responsibility to make sure that they always stay wildlife habitat. So, and we did give them some money for those conservation easements as well. So, carry on Grays Harbor Audubon, that, if nothing else, that's going to, for a very, very long time, keep you, keep you going and keep you special.
Diana, I've been associated with quite a few different Audubon chapters across the country. And almost all of them, they hunger for some property and don't have it. So you did something fantastic.
Thank you. I think so too. Not that I need any personal credit, but I just happen to be the person who answered the phone. And my husband Dean did a lot of the legwork, finding properties and working with the owners to get the best prices. We actually got some donations. One of the timber companies, after we'd been into the land business for a while, they thought it would be really good for their press to make a donation of some property to Audubon and, you know, get it in the newspaper, and it was a nice piece of property, otherwise we wouldn't have taken it. So,
Can you talk about that most recent property over off of Highway 12 near the, I think Dean was involved in purchasing that, wasn't he?
But Dean and Diane donated it.
The one
Right.
that you donated, yeah.
Right.
It's about
So-
30 acres or so, isn't it?
yeah. So, Dean had always, you know, ever since we got that property, that first piece over in,
Junctions.
Junction City area,
Oh, with the Junction City
Yeah.
one, yeah.
he always thought that adding to that would be a really fantastic thing to do. And so he kind of kept his eye, he'd go onto the parcel, different maps and different MLS for sale things, and one day he just said that there's this great piece, right next to the Audubon property, and he said, I want us to buy it and give it to them. And two good things. The price was quite reasonable, and we were at a place in our life where we had the money, we could do that. And so lickety split, he bought that property, and just as fast,
Another lickety split.
another lickety split, and we were able to transfer it to Grace Harbor Audubon.
I think that's the most recent acquisition that we
I think it is. And it's the easiest one to monitor, because if you drive out of Aberdeen on Highway 12 and you look to the right, there it is. And there's a railroad track between
the
the road and the property,
property,
which
yeah.
is very difficult to cross, and so an active railroad track. So it's pretty well protected.
Yeah. We don't have the dumping there that we get on some of our other properties.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, maintenance, there's ongoing things. You have to, clean that stuff up. You have to make sure bad things aren't happening. So it does take effort, human effort, time, and take some money sometimes too. So hang in there. You're doing a great thing.
Thank you. And just to add to that, the chapter has done things like take down old derelict buildings that were a danger, actually, close roads, clean up tons and tons of trash. I remember on the Hump Tulips, RD driving his truck down the road as far as he could get the truck, and all of us going out, and on the river there was a gravel bar, and it was a party site, and it was full of trash. And I can remember us all lugging these bags and bags and bags of trash up the road to where RD had his truck parked. And then since then, we now have a gate to that property, and it hasn't been such a problem. But anyhow, there's lots more to talk about, but I want to turn it over to someone else who would like to add to this historic moment.
I just have one thing to say about Diane. When we first moved to Grace Harbor in the early 90s, I can't remember exactly, I don't know if we did remember how we heard about, well, we had so many birds in our property and didn't know anything about birds. And I think we heard there was a chapter where they were digging. But anyway, in those days, you were meeting in that red building in Montesano. Red Barn building, people might know.
We had our president who ran that.
Yeah. And so we decided to go to a meeting, and there was Diane. I don't know, you know how you just sort of look at somebody and you say, that's somebody I wanna know. That's somebody I wanna be friends with. And there she was the president maybe, or I don't know what, you were standing up and talking, and we just decided this is some place we wanna join. And we did.
And we've been friends ever since.
Ever since.
Wow, thanks, Linda.
Yeah.
How about someone else? Arnie, do you wanna?
Yeah,
Because Arnie's been a member and he was president for several years.
Quite a few.
Yeah, quite a few.
Quite a few.
But June and I decided that we were going to move from Massachusetts somewhere back closer to where I'm from. I'm from native Oregonian, and she and I had been presidents of the Audubon Society in Corvallis, Oregon. She was the president before me, and I took over for her. And we got together, we got married, and I decided I was going to retire. And so I've said, let's try looking around. And we got to, we were coming to look for some place to buy, and we found a place up in Squim? No. Found a place in Port Angeles? No. And we found a place in Hoquiam. And we bought this house in Hoquiam, and we talked to RD and Linda, and they were nice enough to tell us about the Audubon Society here, and then it sort of just grew, like Topsy, sort of. So we had this is quite a occasion for us to, I'm going to tell them the story about Satsip. We were driving here, and she said, "We can't live there. There's a nuclear plant." And I said, "No, we had the contract for it, and it was canceled." So that's not going to happen.
many of us will.
Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
remember what year it was when you got here?
It was, we bought the house in 2004,
Okay.
and it had been canceled before then. Yep. Thank you.
Well, I can remember a lot of bits and pieces here and there that I don't know if I could put it together for a narrative, but I do have a funny story. One of the Christmas bird counts, we were all out counting birds. The weather was miserable. It was bitter cold, high winds, storms, and at the end of the day, we were freezing to death, and we ended up somewhere near Ocean Shores. So we said, let's go into Ocean Shores to have dinner. So we went into Ocean Shores, and it was totally blacked out. They had lost, the whole town had lost its electricity. Had lost the electricity. So we kind of drove around, and then we saw a glimmer of a light in one window, and it was the Galway Irish restaurant window, and they had a little candle there. So we said, well, maybe we can go there. Maybe they're open. So we went, and here they had just fortuitously made a big pot of coffee in a nice thermos, and they also had made a big crock pot full of Irish stew. So we had dinner in a reasonably warm place and hot coffee, and it all turned out okay. But so they have I have a soft spot in my heart for the Galway Irish restaurant. Yeah, they were there in the midst of the dark. Yeah. Does anybody else have another story?
Did you help start this chapter?
I can't remember exactly when I started, because when I came, we moved here in '84, and Jim and I had helped start a chapter back in Pennsylvania, just a little chapter associated with the college. And so we moved out here, and I wanted to join a chapter, but there wasn't one anywhere around, so I joined Black Hills Audubon, and I think I was a member of Black Hills Audubon for like about 10 years or so, anyhow, '84 to '94, and then I suddenly, after a while, got wind, oh, there's a chapter in Grays Harbor, how about that? And so I stayed member of both chapters for a few years, and then now they're all my friends in Black Hills. That's a wonderful chapter. They're very activist, they're very, very educationally oriented, and they're very much bigger than we are. But anyhow, so that's it. But our EIN number, which tells when we got tax exempt status, is 94. So that's when we were officially for the IRS possibility. It was a chapter, yeah.
That's good.
But,
So here we are at our 30th.
hmm?
And so we are at our 30th.
Yes, that's right. Actually, we're celebrating it a little late, but that's okay. That's okay. And I remember being at Dean and Diane's McClary house for tons of meetings. And I think most of them were for the Shorebird Festival, and some were for the board. We had a lot of meetings at your house.
Some for GNR.
That's right.
Jennifer Belcher.
Yeah, Jennifer Belcher was there. Yeah.
Oh, Jennifer Belcher. I liked her so much.
Yes.
Yeah. So is there anybody else that has a story of association where?
I thought of one more thing I wanted to mention,
Okay.
which you might, okay. It's about Lannis. I think I told you already that Lannis let us meet there. But Lana told us at one time, she said, because it's on the port property, she said, the port people warned me about you Audubon people. They said that we're very rude and that she should not, be pushed around by us, I guess. But Lana said, but you are the nicest people I've ever seen. So.
Oh, there you go. I remember that now. Yeah. And if I could give you a quick update of one of the benefits or advantages of having these properties already protected, is that state agencies and local conservation districts have come to us and said, you're one of the biggest landowners in Grays Harbor County, and we're working on this project. One is on Cloqualum Creek, one is on the Hump Tulips River, and there's another one down on our original property, the Salt Marsh, and we wondered, could we have permission to, get together with you and work on these properties? And they would always be protecting fish habitat. So the fact that we got those properties and are hanging on to them really helping with the improvement of the natural world. And a lot of our properties, okay, we have some problem properties and we need to deal with them, but most of our properties are gradually getting wilder and older and fending for themselves quite well. So, yeah, I agree. I think it's a legacy worth preserving. Anyhow. So, anybody else have any comments or questions or?
I have just a couple of quickies.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I was reminded by the book you brought, Becky, that Hazel Wolf was one of the original organizers, and I'm not sure at the time, she might have been on the national board, I can't remember, but she was always trying to organize chapters. And then the other woman, Helen Engel. I wanted to just let folks know about Helen Engel. She actually had some roots in Grays Harbor County. Her grandpa lived in Oakville, and so she always had a soft spot in her heart for Grays Harbor. And when the chapter started and got going, I mean, for the whole rest of her life, she always kind of kept an eye on Grays Harbor Audubon and wanted to always know what was happening and everything good. Do you have problems? And one of our earliest property acquisitions, I'll call it acquisitions, but we didn't have to pay anything for it, was that little 3-acre piece right at that point off 105.
Down in Pacific County,
Yeah.
that little,
Yeah, National Audubon somehow had gotten that 3 acres, and Helen recommended to the national board, she must have been on the board at the time, that we've got a local chapter, Grays Harbor Audubon, they already own property, they really should be the owners of that. And so she jumped in and she made that happen. So,
well,
She-
that's some
yeah,
things
she-
I didn't know.
yeah, she's always had that connection with our chapter.
Yeah, I ran into her at the parade in Oakville one year, because her family, you know, she was visiting her family.
Yeah.
But she always said, oh, you know, politically, we don't really talk about politics. But she used to have a garden, I mean, in her home in Tacoma, she had this lovely backyard with a garden in it, and she always had garden parties for all the movers and shakers in Washington, and so they could all get together and, you know, talk.
One last thing, speaking of movers and shakers, in my early days in Grays Harbor County, and, you know, trying to be environmentally aware, I kept hearing this name, Janet Strong. Well, Janet Strong's done this, and Janet Strong is the person you should talk to about that, and I just started, and people would tell me this because Jan lived in McClary, outside of McClary, and so did we, and I don't remember the issue, but one day she called me at home, and we talked, and I'm shaking. I'm at home, and I'm so nervous. The Janet Strong has called me at home.
Oh, come on.
And we talked. I don't remember. It was some environmental thing. There was
Oh,
always
obviously.
there was always some fire to try to put out or battle to try to do. And so from that point forward, though, you know, I want to say Jan's been my friend, and I've just always admired her tenacity and intelligence and hard work. I mean, she's always willing to jump into a battle, a problem, whatever. And so that, for me, that's a little historical piece. I just remember that phone call, the first time we ever spoke. And she'd been kind of like one of my heroes that I'd never really met or anything. Just her reputation was just so wide.
She's getting red.
Anyway, thank you.
I don't know what to say now, but are there other people who would like to chip in their 2
I
cents
hate to
worth?
jump in constantly, but Diane reminded me about Helen. Helen organized a picnic, you know, when we were first getting started. She organized a picnic at Stewart Park in Aberdeen, which I can walk to, and she was raving about Stewart Park. And a lot of the other people who are not from this area also knew Stewart Park. I know my sister who lives in Seattle, she was always telling me, this is a gem. And that park has since been allowed to deteriorate by the city of Aberdeen has not maintained it, which is sad. But because she's from Grays Harbor County, that's probably why she knew about that place and organized our picnic there. Yeah.
She was special.
She certainly was. Yeah. Well,
Linda's been around longer than I have. Did she have more memories? Linda? Yeah, you. You've been around longer than I have, and I feel like a newcomer.
we had meetings at Linda's house too.
Yes, we have.
Well,
I can't remember.
I did talk about our getting involved and going down and seeing them about the red barn. Every time I pass that red barn building, I think of that. I don't know, I mean, Artie and I, we're so sad, cause we don't know one bird from another almost. And everybody has been so wonderful, and we learn so much every time we're involved with anything with all of you. I can't imagine not being involved with all of you and what you've made me and allowed me to appreciate, about the whole area and the birds and how hard you all work and how we all have to remember we are living through difficult times, and people are gonna try to take away some of the things we're trying to protect, and we must keep fighting, we must persevere, because otherwise everything will be lost. So what's so wonderful to be with people who feel that way, the same way, right? Yeah, we all know that this is very important, and that what we're doing is very important.
That's good.
And Audubon has stepped up to protect those things, and in some cases has gone to court about those
Yes.
sort of things.
Yes.
In fact, right now, Audubon is trying to protect the second largest interdunal wetland mosaic from being converted into a golf course. And the recent birding trip that Audubon did, they discovered, Mary can talk about that, 46 different species.
Just in an afternoon.
Just
Becky
in a
and Mary
single
found that.
afternoon on the very course, the very place that they wanna convert. And then likewise, there's the danger of a pellet company developing at the edge of the wildlife refuge, which is an incredibly dangerous decision that unfortunately Hoquiam gave a determination of non-significance to. So, here for Audubon.
Yeah.
Yes. We're small but mighty.
I'm Mary O'Neill, and I'm a recent joiner to this club, I think. I'm more recent than Arnie Martin, and in fact, I think he predates me by 2 years, or maybe only one year. But I have a sister, an older sister, who when her children grew up, she lived in Las Vegas. When her children grew up, she didn't have that much to do, so she joined the Audubon, and they were about birds, and she went on her first adult field trip, and she said, "Oh my gosh, there weren't any children around to have to monitor." I had so much fun, and so she went to the University of Las Vegas and took a birding course and became one of the first outstanding birders of the Southwest Desert. She led field trips all the time out into the desert. So there's a sister in between her and me, and that sister brought back this news to me, and she helped me move into this beautiful little property in the West Hill of Auburn, and she says, "You have such nice trees around here, you should have birds all over the place." And so hang up a feeder. So I hung up a feeder, and I pulled out a little guidebook that I had I bought in Port Angeles for field guide to the Olympics and Mount Rainier, and started watching the birds, and then I joined the Audubon, and the Rainier chapter of the Audubon was very active in field trips, and that was my first introduction to birding in Grays Harbor County. We came over from Seattle to Grays Harbor, and we had a fantastic time. And so when I decided it was time to leave my former life and retire, I moved to Grays Harbor because I like the value of the real estate here. And I immediately joined the Audubon Society, and I thought we were all gonna have field trips and have a lot of fun. And here I find they're all busy worried about these properties, and it's taken me how many years, 10, 15 years to learn these properties, but I do have a pretty good grasp on them now. And when I get feeling better again, I'll start leading field trips. I've been leading the field trips for you, and I'll pick that up again one
Well,
of
and
these
if anybody can find any bird that is around, Mary's the one that finds it. Okay. Anybody else? Or are you all ready to have a piece of cake?
Ready for cake.
Let them eat cake.
Let there be cake. Isn't that in the Tale of Two Cities?
There you go.
Did you cut the cake already?
We cut it, we hope it cut.
We
Well,
attempted to.
Did you
Who
find
wants
the
to-
devil claws?
Yeah.
is there somebody who would like to be the server? We have plenty of plates, a couple of tools over there to use, and the little birdies could sit. I think we could put the little birdies on a napkin or something. They're really cute, aren't they?
They are.